All right, our next panel is about ag tech. And the North Bay is uniquely situated to be a hub for ag tech, as you can imagine. Our next moderator, Carissa, here is the president of Sonoma County Wine Growers, and she'll lead us in a discussion with Tim and Roland, both local ag tech CEOs, who are going to share insights on how they see our farms changing into the future.
All right. Well, I do appreciate Meredith's expectations about moving to Sonoma and the boots and the buckles. And I would just like to thank Tim for wearing cowboy boots today. So we're appropriately representing agriculture up here. Now, Roland and I failed a little bit, so we're sorry.
I was going to wear my Converse, and I said, wait a minute, that's not right.
That's not right. What are you doing?
I put my boots on.
Yeah. So I just want to start by saying how excited I am, and probably what a curveball a little bit that we're now talking about farming and agriculture after a super tech day and words that were used that I don't even know about, and my farmers certainly don't talk about, I can tell you. But Zach and I have been engaging in this wish, and I think vision, with the value and importance of agriculture in the North Bay and really, frankly, across California and frankly, across the United States and the world. When you think about the future of climate and carbon sequestration and all of those wonderful things that we need to be focused on, our wish is to have the North Bay be the hub, the Silicon Valley for ag tech. So I think that's why today's conversation is so important. So with that, I'm going to have Tim and Roland introduce themselves and a little bit about their organizations and role, and we'll get going.
Great. Thanks, Carissa, and thanks to everyone who put on this gathering today. I love entrepreneurs, and I think startups are the only way to go. I'm actually a local Sonoma County person. I was born and raised in Healdsburg. Started my own farming operation at the age of 16. Accidentally got into high tech, so I'm kind of the opposite of a lot of folks who go into high tech and then they accidentally come into ag. But I've been operating two careers, one in Sonoma County in the northern part, in the metropolis called Geyserville. I have a farming operation called Trattori Farms. We do olive oils and wines, and actually it's really cool because some of the folks I've seen today have actually visited or are club members, so anybody's welcome up there, and I can give you a card afterwards for some discounts. But I also, a couple years ago, almost out of sheer desperation, started another company, and Carissa actually kind of alluded to it, that there's some stuff going on with climate and other things that are really impacting our global food source. And so I crossed the streams between my ag background and my high-tech background and created a company called Agtonomy. We're a startup. We are a software and service company that is working with OEMs, farming equipment OEMs, to help them with their digital transformation, to help accelerate them through a digital transformation. Like we've seen many other industries, the automotive industry and other industries accelerating through that. So our first partner that is public that we can announce is Bobcat. So we have a fleet of all-electric, autonomous farming vehicles, robots that are out in Sonoma County, Napa, and Monterey counties, operating right now. And we just launched the company 2 months ago at the World Ag Expo in beautiful Tulare, California. So anyway, that's a little bit about Agtonomy. Roland?
Hi, is this on? Yeah. Roland Vandermeer. I'm from Holland originally. My dad was a farmer for a brief while, then he became a pilot. I became an engineer. Worked in there we go. Okay, worked in Silicon Valley as an engineer, and then ultimately as a venture capitalist for about 20 years doing startups in communications, things you might know, Peregrine, Broadcom is probably the biggest you all recognize. Everything else was acquired by Lucent or Cisco or went out of business. Most of them went out of business, but that's okay. As long as the third work, you're doing really well. About 15 years ago, I said, what are we doing in this planet? I had an epiphany and started looking around and worked on water, agriculture, energy, and waste, all the four issues that really plague us today. And I'll start by saying, and this is really important to hear this, is there's not one industry in this world that is sustainable today, okay? Just start with that premise. We are dead as human species in about 20 years if we don't change the course of history right now, which is why I'm really focused on agriculture. It's number one problem we have around the world. It's the most environmentally destructive of anything we do. We've modified the earth completely. And the systems, I started a permaculture team, about $2 billion now, doing permanent crop all around California, the West Coast, now to Chile and Australia, doing great. Equilibrium Capital, you might know, doing greenhouses, biodigesters. We did some green real estate, all that. Worked really well, doesn't make a dent, okay? Nothing of that makes a dent. So then I discovered resonance science, resonance physics, and this is something you all should pay attention to. This is what the world is really made out of. It's vibration, it's energy. Einstein, Tesla, David Bohm, if you know these famous scientists, they all talked about resonance and physics in this way. Everything's energy. We work with energy, we can change the world and the paradigm. And that's what Aptera, the company that I helped finance to start, we have a great technical team here in San Rafael right now. And we're on over 120 farms today. These are 100, 200 acre farm fields. Each of these farmers probably manages 5 to 50,000 acres, and they're all going to be expanding with us next coming years. So we're going from hundreds to thousands next year, and I'll explain more as we get into it.
So I'm really excited about the topic Farm of the Future. At the Wine Growers, we actually have a formal initiative and vision that was inspired by our collaboration with Ford Pro that we launched about 1.5 years ago, and helping our farmers think about going electric on their ranches, which wasn't their first thought process to get electric trucks and vans and charging, but we're moving the needle slowly.
And tractors.
And tractors. Well, I wasn't going to steal your thunder because I'm going to turn it over. So my vision for Farm of the Future is really having a better system, innovation acceleration that happens, that we can do enough scenario planning today that we can help our farmers make the better decisions tomorrow. And I think we're having to respond so quickly to climate that we need to be more on the offense. So I see Farm of the Future as an offensive, going proactive with farming versus responding to Mother Nature. So that's my vision. I start with that because I would love both Tim and Roland, and I think it goes to probably your passion with where you're going in your organizations, but what is your vision for the Farm of the Future?
Yeah, I've always looked at sort of the analog between smart home and smart farm, and I want to make it clear, there is absolutely no overlap there. And there's a reason for that, because, with smart homes and homes of the future, if you all recall when it started, we got cameras, and then we got door locks, and we got a bunch of other things. Those are all like services of convenience. The one thing about the Farm of the Future is that what's going to evolve is not about services of convenience. I mean, farmers don't really care if you can unlock the barn or whatever automatically. Farmers are desperate right now because of this perfect storm that is upon us. And one of the biggest issues, with specialty crop farmers. Now I have to kind of, and Carissa can help me here. There's row crops and big ag, and those are on the big, flat farms all over, especially the United States. But then there are other kinds of crops, sometimes referred to as high-value crops, sometimes referred to as specialty crops, sometimes referred to as permanent crops, that are not grown in rotation. So you plant a tree, like I grow olives, and it takes about 7 years for them to yield. And in that industry, which is really near and dear to Sonoma and Marin counties, I would say, and you would know better, but I would say it's predominantly that kind of high-value crop.
Absolutely.
The thing that's driving the Farm of the Future for those kind of crops evolves around a couple of key things. Labor is number one. We've all heard of different markets that have had labor issues with the pandemic. I've been farming for many decades, and let's just say labor has been an issue since I was born. In ag. So what you're seeing are farmers in those categories develop Farm of the Future a little bit differently than the Farm of the Future in row crops. So ignore everything you know about smart home. The Farm of the Future is really customized to the particular segment of agriculture, and I think there's 2 or 3 big ones in particular. But in this area, we developed some vehicles that did, manual and this advanced remote control and this auto cruise thing, and then it also did autonomy. And we're out there working with Treasury Wine Estates and some other companies that have been public about working with us. And from day one, they all said, yeah, I don't care about that mode, that mode, that mode, I just need autonomy. And we've had to accelerate so fast because everyone is so desperate. They have so many positions open and they just can't fill. And it's a broader issue than Sonoma County specialty crops. It's kind of like we're in trouble to feed the world. Roland painted some doom and gloom. He's right. And it starts with a couple of key areas. So I think you're going to see farms evolve around Labor, I think you're going to see them evolve around water, which is another really big issue. And if there isn't technology that is helping in a couple of these key areas, it doesn't make sense in farm of the future. So no automatic door locks on barns is the bottom line.
Okay, so my view is a little different, okay? This is about working in harmony with nature. Our farm system is an industrial farm system based on petrochemicals, NPK, okay? That's probably you all heard that by now. And it's not really the way we should go, okay? You've heard that. Any organic farmer will tell you there's many ways to do things. Permaculture people are even better because they do a whole integrated system. Biodynamic even cooler. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about how do the industrial farmer get this done. So our system charges water. That's the first thing we do. We go structured water. You all should drink structured water. Look it up. It's really good for you. Your cells want it. The plants want it. We use a third to half the water that other farm do. And these are A/B trials on pivots around the country. The second thing we do, reduce the inputs by about a third to half. So all those inputs that are poisoning and toxifying the soil, reduce them in half, minimum. Third thing we do is we then charge the water, okay, with this information that you need. Organic materials, we use information of the frequency of a fertilizer into the water, of an organic fertilizer, into the water. The water is a conduit to take it to the plant. The plant says, I recognize that vibration. It's nitrogen. It's whatever you're giving it. It recognizes it, it takes it on, and it grows as if it's the real thing. Why? Nothing's real in this world. This is all vibration, what we're seeing here. So once you understand this, it's as profound as all get out. Our labs here in San Rafael, I invite anybody to come down and give you a tour. This works all the time, and the farmers are blown away. They call it God's water or magic water, whatever they want to call it. And then we do an overlay too. We'll take care of pest issues and all that stuff using the energy of something, not the actual physical substance. And we only use organic and natural energies, and that really works well. I was blown away. This is 3 years ago. I came in there, I put some money in, I said, this is amazing what we're doing. Became CEO for a while. I just hired my replacement 2 weeks ago, so now I'm chairman again. It's wonderful. The guy who was running is actually a Silicon Valley exec, brilliant, came from a farming family for 25 years, so he knows farming too, but he knows how to sell and market, and we're now just taking off. But this is the idea, giving farmers the tools they can work with nature and back to what they're doing. Because you all know if you sing to your plant, it's going to be healthier, right? Let the farmer sing to his plants, not poison them with the toxins. And that's the journey we're all on together. And that's why I'm really standing up for Optara right now.
So I think you started to touch on, I'm going to flip our questions a little bit, but we had a lively debate when we were prepping for this about sort of the role of what I'm saying big ag, which I think Roland referenced, versus small ag, which is more the specialty crop, high value crop that Tim was talking about in the world I revolve in. And how does that differ? Because I think we had a nice debate, Roland, the two of us especially, on the importance of wine grapes, which I think we're all going to have a wine break at some point. So I think wine is very important, and that's a good use of agriculture. Some people might think there's other uses of agriculture, but we can have that debate. But I would love to understand from both of you the role of big ag, small ag, and specialty crops and commodity.
Well, I'll start first. So your aura gets damaged when you drink too much wine, by the way. That's a woo-woo thing, by the way.
But you become
I'm
much
an electrical
funnier,
engineer,
right?
so don't think I'm woo-woo about this stuff. I'm about physics. Farming is farming. I mean, whether it's specialty crop, we're in Salinas Valley now. We're on some of the most amazing farms down there. We're with almond growers. We're everywhere we can go. It does work across everything. They're not the ones that are the problem, though. Okay, that's clear. The problem exists in those massive greenhouses, those massive farms out there that have issues with pests and stuff, and they're doing stuff we don't want to eat. You don't want to eat non-organic food. It's that bad now. And you don't want to drink the water from their farms either. It's that bad. So we have to solve these problems. That's the problem we set out to solve. And the specialty guy is actually more tuned in, more sensitive, more able to adapt. And that's why I think it's not our focus, but it absolutely works there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the specialty has some other interesting characteristics to it that help differentiate it as well. So if you look up, and anybody can do this, go look up the top 12 crops that are good for carbon sequestration. I think it's like 80% are permanent crops. And it makes sense, right? Because, through photosynthesis, you're taking CO2, you're basically storing the carbon, releasing the O2, and if you're taking row crops that you churn, 3, maybe 4 times a year, and you're tilling that soil, you're just releasing that back in the air. So I think that specialty crops, even though it's a much smaller portion of our food chain, call it 20%, your fruit, your nut trees, etc. I think it's a much higher percentage of things that can help us in the future. And by the way, all of this talk about, climate and everything, it is top of mind for farmers. I would say, over the last 5 years especially, maybe 10 years, but 5 years. And it's also because agriculture recognizes that they are a solution for that, or can be a big solution for that. So I think that the two worlds will live in harmony, but there are some big differences. The other thing that's driving specialty, even though it's a smaller percentage, if you think about how many people it takes to farm, 10,000 acres in Iowa, let's say, it's actually just a handful. Exactly, Roland. Whereas if you think of what it takes to farm 100 acres in Sonoma County of grapes, I mean, it's like a dozen. So 50% or more of the expenses of farmers and specialty is just labor. So you're going to see an evolution between the two. Now, to be controversial with Roland, not to be controversial, but to kind of share with you the other side, there are farmers in specialty that would love the science of water and all these other things, and they would love data. They would love more data. Actually, they don't really want data. They want data analytics that yield actions to tell them what to do. So, but right now they're desperate. Like this week, it's hilarious. Last week and this week, these farmers can't even figure out how to mow their cover crop because we had this explosion this winter, and they can't hire anyone, and they're trying to run 24 hours a day, and they just can't catch up with it. So there are some basic things that are going to drive farm of the future, and then there's some more longer-term things like what Roland is talking about for all farmers, and some farmers right now, but some farmers later. And it's just because these farmers are desperate, they can't even do their house cleaning, to get to the garage or to get to the bigger picture.
So given the audience, what do you think is sort of the biggest challenge that we're still trying to solve, which there's probably a number of them, but maybe your top 2 or so, and then the biggest opportunity where we really could use the innovation and think that would really be more transformational?
So the biggest challenge we see is water. Okay, I know California thinks, no. Yeah, absolutely. Everywhere the aquifers are drying up, everywhere that's getting more salty or salinity is just way up. And there's ways to deal with this. We can put enzymes in the water. We can do a lot of things through frequency again. And that is number one across the agua, I don't know how to say that, aquifer out there in the Middle West. But it's drying up too. So you're seeing this happen. So water is the number one issue we have, period, across the board. When you see Bill Gates buying land, he's buying water, by the way. He's not buying land. And God knows what's going to happen there. So that's number one. Number two is, we have to reduce the inputs, the toxification of all these inputs in the field. Parkinson's, any neurological diseases, you go to the Mid-Valley or San Joaquin Valley, they're all sick. They're all sick. Cancers and things you can't believe. And that's not an accident, okay? This is all part of the system we're part of. And we see it everywhere. So we got to get rid of those two things, barns to eat the food we want to eat, actually, in the future.
Yeah, I agree water is a really big issue, and I said that earlier too, and I agree with Roland. I wouldn't put it number one if you take the context of specialty crop. I know I sound like a broken record, but labor is probably even above that. Because you can't get to solving some of the water issues and some of the herbicide issues, which, by the way, I totally agree with you on, until you have enough resources that you can do the basics, right? I mean, farmers are struggling. People who think farming is a really profitable business, it's like flying a 747 about an inch off the ground. That's kind of the margins that you deal with. And if you have any perturbations, you kind of wipe out. Or at least for that year you wipe out, and you hope the next year is better. So, but labor's really big. So for entrepreneurs out there, if you can do anything to help in, creating solutions, there are a bunch of companies that are trying to do automated, autonomous farming equipment. And you know what? We're all friends. We're all working together. And it's funny because venture capitalists come to me and say, well, what do you think about your competition? I'm like, well, I actually love my competition, and we're working together, and we both need to be successful, or all of us need to be successful. I've never been in an industry where ag tech has been at the forefront of opportunity and just sheer impact that it can have, because that's how desperate the world is right now. So I think labor, water, pesticides. One of the things that Agtonomy is working on is electromechanical precision weeding. Why is that so important? Because in crops, in row crops, there's a lot of companies that have created robots that will weed between lettuce and other things. they usually take away about 10% or more of the crop. In permanent crops, if you take away 10% of the crop, you're really screwed. So, so we have to be a lot more precise. So we're doing some really interesting robotics, and companies that have, you know, we're using a lot of what Meredith talked about in terms of a lot of AI ML in all of our operations, and that's something that's going to be an even bigger opportunity moving forward. So any startups out there that are thinking about, you know, automation and robotics for things like precision weeding, so that you don't have to use Roundup and other nasty herbicides, because it is really bad. And by the way, if you ask any farmer, and I think everybody up here will attest to this, do you like using Roundup? There is not one farmer who likes using Roundup. Did I just say Roundup? Okay. Is anyone here from Bayer?
You're going to get pulled off the stage here in a minute. No, Roland, did you want to add?
Yeah, no, it's interesting what you're saying, Rhonda, because there are certain weeds out there, you know, pigweed, there's a whole bunch I can name. They get angrier now. I mean, they're just getting angry out there. It's like it comes back redder and meaner every time, and they got to go to higher grade poisons that are just horrific. And that's the game that's being chased right now. Same thing happening in pharma, by the way. They're just chasing this disease. You cannot chase nature. Nature is so much more advanced. The technology we're seeking is right in our bodies. This is an amazing machine you're living in. Don't forget that. This is a machine, and it's carrying you, the soul of you, around. It's remarkable. 37 million trillion operations happening in your body right now, and you're not doing anything about that. It's all just happening for you. That's nature. Okay, we can't beat it. We can't do that. We have to join it and work with it. And that's the game we're in. The one thing I want to add, just as a really important point, don't chase money. Okay, I've been in that game. It works for a little while, and then you realize that is not it at all. Okay, go with your heart, with your passion, with your heart. Do it, whatever your calling is, whatever it is, your heart, pursue it. It'll all venture in there. And when you do that, you'll tune into this planet, you'll tune into what has to happen, and it'll eventually evolve to where we have to be. The other way around will take us back in the game, and the game is not the right game we're playing.
I couldn't agree more with Roland on this point, and that's why in ag tech, what I'm sure you're seeing as well is that there are so many people who want to join these ag tech companies for that mission purpose, more so than the money purpose. So at least the good news is that there's a massive talent pool out there, from incredible computer scientists to, you know, other kinds of folks who really want to apply themselves to these big problems. And ag tech is probably, I think, the biggest problem out there, or the biggest opportunity out there, I should say.
So I'm still visualizing the 747 an inch off the ground, and it takes me back to when I started this job 11 years ago, and one of the first things a farmer asked me is, do you know why it's called farming? Because gambling was already taken. And so I think if you put that as like the filter that you think about agriculture and farming through, it provides a really interesting perspective, and why I think we're so excited to have this conversation in this room, in this audience, where we're not typically invited, frankly, to the table. So kudos to you and the entire team for having us on the stage. And I think in the last 2 or 3 minutes here, I just want to go around and have you each have a chance, and I would love to add my thoughts too on kind of the call to action we would like to see from the room, from partners, from, you know, future partners. Maybe Roland, I'll start with you.
When I started about 20 years ago, a farmer coached us on our business models we built around farming. And he said, 2 years out of 7, you're going to lose your shirt, so just don't worry about that. And 5, you'll do okay. 1, you'll do superior. Now, 2 out of 7, you might make money. And it's really flipped. In 20 years, it's just changed that much. It's that hard out there. The other thing we did, we set out farm to brand. Okay, the other thing, and I think that's what you're doing as well. You farm and you have brand, and that's the only thing that can let you survive. Otherwise, you're a commodity and you're wiped out pretty quickly. And it's one of the key things of farming. So with that in mind, this is a cooperation. I mean, we have to cooperate. We have to form collaborations. You heard Salesforce talk about 1-1-1. Yeah, we're talking about 20% of our company is going to go to our partner farmers. Okay, that's what I have in the plan. That's what I have in the cap table. All that's meant for them. Why? If we make money, I want them to make money, because we're going to make money on their back, and they deserve that. And then we'll allocate 20% of our resources to the farmers that need it too. So all this is a cooperation that we have to come together on. And this is the journey we're all on together. So this is what's so powerful about agriculture. It does bring agriculture. It's about culture, okay? It really ties everybody together.
Yeah, I'd say for the things that I would like to see, or the call to action, for any investors out there, look at allocating part of your fund to climate. And by the way, ag tech fits right under there. one thing that I've seen, and I've done lots of companies in my career. I've sold companies to Microsoft and Apple and Dell, and I never thought I would have high-tech venture capitalists investing in ag tech. So GV, Google Ventures is one of our biggest investors, Toyota, a bunch of others, and I encourage investors, big and small, to look at these kind of opportunities because it is such a huge problem, and we need to continue to focus on it because it's going to take everyone to really make an impact in this. So that's one call to action. And then on the other side, on the entrepreneurial side, especially being in Sonoma and Marin, where agriculture is such a big part of the community here, take a look at these kind of opportunities. If you don't know farming, that's okay. But there's some great companies that are starting up or are already established, where the impact that you can have there and that the companies are having are just huge, right? We can all design another automated door lock to beat a dead horse, but why do that as opposed to solving some of these big challenges and really helping to feed the world? So the time is now, and it's a call to action for both investors and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I love that, and I do love data. So on behalf of the farmers, and I think one data point that always sticks with me: the last time USDA did their ag census, which is a 5-year tracking, it was between 2012 and 17. We're in the middle of a new ag census. We lost 1 million acres of agriculture in the state of California in 5 years. 7,700 farms, and almost all of them were less than 100 acres. So the call to action is the opposite, which is if we don't do something and we need help to do something, we're all going to be looking at a very different world. So whether you think about 20 years from now and sort of the climate crisis, or just where does our food come from in the future, and what happens to our land, and do we pave over it, and what does that look like, I think there's a real risk and a real opportunity. So sort of flipping it to the positive, I would say as a wine growers, the thing that we've done, and we've looked at big companies because they have deeper pockets like a Ford Pro to come in and help us, but the small companies too that are really flexible and nimble and able to come in and help. I mean, we have more soil types than all of France. We have 19 microclimates. We have innovative farmers. So if you want to pilot something, we want to be a living lab for the world in agriculture right here in your backyard. I actually represent the Marin growers too. It's Crush District 3. So Marin, Sonoma, all lumped into one. So I think come to us. You can start with our organization. We'll match you with farmers that are looking for places to pilot and innovate and learn together and share the data and create the case studies and do that, because I think with agriculture, the best part is it's not competitive on the farm. We all win by sharing the practices on the farm. It's a little different than some other sort of bigger companies or public companies. So if we can win through sharing those best practices, I think that's how we really make change. And I think that's where we can get all of you to invest and help and innovate with us. So I will get off my literally pedestal here and thank both Roland and Tim, and thank all of you for caring enough about agriculture to give us 30 minutes to chat about it today. So thank you.